I'm Mark Irons. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly. Breaking China, the communist country strikes back at the U.S. as President Trump also targets tariffs on Mexico. Let's vote on it. Republicans are pushing a measure they say will keep non-citizens from taking part in U.S. elections. We're on Capitol Hill. Holy Father's health. The Vatican provides an update after the Pope's surprise visit to St. Peter's Basilica. Plus, the power of three. Advice on how to prepare for Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter from EWTN's own Father John Paul. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, President Donald Trump posts on Truth Social, "We are doing really well on our tariff policy, very exciting for America and the world." The comment comes as China hits back, raising tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%. U.S. import taxes on China now total 145%. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Mark, good evening to you. While President Donald Trump was getting an annual physical at Walter Reed, his press secretary in the White House press briefing room was fielding questions on tariffs and emphasizing that the president, in her words, is optimistic.
As the tariff hike tit-for-tat continues, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tells reporters,
more than 75 countries have now reached out to the Trump administration, eager to address the trade issues that have exploited America and hurt our workers in the process. The phones have been ringing off the hook to make deals.
Earlier this week, President Trump announced China would face 125% tariffs, but he did not include a 20% tariff on China tied to its role in fentanyl production. That brought it up to 145%. At his cabinet meeting yesterday, President Trump said he has great respect for President Xi of China.
President Xi, he's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time, and I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
The tariffs on again and off again have caused alarm in stock and bond markets. China denouncing Trump's policy as economic bullying, and President Xi saying there are no winners in a tariff war. American top imports from China include electronics like computers and cell phones. Expect to see prices rise on those products. And for now, the tariff tussle between the world's two largest economies shows no sign of easing.
But the president has made it very clear he's open to a deal with China.
Meanwhile, in Warsaw, Poland, the European Union's Commissioner for Economy and Productivity says they are ready to negotiate a mutually acceptable outcome, adding,
in fact, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods. But of course, if needs be, we are also ready to respond with countermeasures to protect our interests, our people, and our companies.
The press secretary also said today President Trump wants to bolster manufacturing in the U.S., bring down the cost of living, and maintain critical supply chains. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Israel is ordering parts of Gaza to evacuate ahead of planned military operations. The area lies within a so-called buffer zone that Israel is creating to separate Palestinians from Israeli communities along the Gaza border. A UN relief agency estimates close to 400,000 Palestinians have been displaced in Gaza since Israel ended a ceasefire with Hamas last month. A Russian-American woman freed by Moscow has arrived safe and sound back in the U.S. Ksenia Karolina landed around 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday at Joint Base Andrews, where she was greeted by her fiancé. She was released as part of a prisoner swap between the U.S. and Russia just months after the Trump administration organized the release of Mark Fogel. The Trump White House is monitoring the war in Ukraine. A special envoy is in St. Petersburg for a high-stakes meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Steve Witkoff has been pressing the Kremlin to accept a ceasefire deal with Ukraine. This comes as President Trump says, quote, Russia has to get moving on a peace deal. Russian forces currently hold the advantage in Ukraine, and the war the White House calls terrible and senseless. And joining us now is Stephen Moore, president of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Stephen, thanks for coming back on. Steve Witkoff met with Russian President Putin. What do you make of the meeting and the Trump administration's progress toward ending the war?
Well, I'm actually pretty concerned because I think that Putin responds to strength, and I don't think the Trump administration is showing the strength that needs to be shown. Witkoff, I think, is new to this and is still on a steep learning curve. He said last time he met with Putin that he was a nice guy. And as you know, Putin has shut down every church in occupied Ukraine. There is not one Catholic priest left in occupied Ukraine. So he is not a nice guy. And the best way to deal with them is not giving them everything they want.
President Trump did put on social media that it's time for Russia to get moving, and he called the war terrible and senseless. Do you think the president will start to increase pressure on Russia?
Well, I hope so, because the last time they announced a peace agreement, or I'm sorry, a ceasefire, the criteria of the ceasefire was that each country would not hit the other's energy infrastructure, because Ukraine has actually been very successful in debilitating the Russian refining capabilities with their long-range missiles and drones. And of course, the Russians have been trying to take out Ukraine's energy infrastructure since the winter of 2022. And so the day after Trump negotiated this ceasefire against energy infrastructure, Putin hit a Ukrainian energy installation. So it's difficult to see where Putin wants peace.
So where do things stand on getting a ceasefire, considering what we know at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think Putin's playing games. And I think that, it's the ball is in Vladimir Putin's court. And I think Trump needs to show some capability to get Putin to do what he wants him to do. Because if you're negotiating for Ukraine, just looking for security guarantees, you're looking for a way to make this war stop. And the difference between stopping and halting is a big one, because if this halts just for a few months, a year, or even a couple of years, Putin's just going to rearm. And he's going to come back against Ukraine and the Baltic states and Poland and anyone else who gets in his way, because his goal is to reconstitute the Russian Empire.
Well, lastly, Stephen, European allies vow to send billions more to the war effort in Ukraine. How do you view Europe's role moving forward in this war amid the negotiations?
Well, Europe needs to lead. So Europe has been on vacation since 2014 when this war started. Almost none of the countries have hit their 2% goal for NATO, except for this last year. There's still 8 NATO countries that have not met their 2% spending goal on defense. So, and Europe as a whole has sent more money to Russia in the form of cheap LNG, cheap liquid natural gas payments, than they've sent to Ukraine for its defense. So it's time for Europe to get in the game and get moving on this.
All right, Stephen Moore, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Should Americans be required to show proof of U.S. citizenship when they register to vote in federal elections? A Republican-backed bill called the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, passed the House and now is on its way to the Senate. But some voter rights groups and Democrats call it voter suppression and a way to undermine U.S. democracy. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Good evening. The bill passed mostly along party lines and it now heads to the U.S. Senate, but it could be in for a tough fight. Republicans will need Democrat support to overcome the 60-vote threshold it needs to get passed. Speaker Mike Johnson says it's common sense legislation.
There's no mechanism in federal law, in current law, that requires states to prove citizenship. So even though it is currently against the law, only U.S. citizens should decide U.S. elections, there's no way to make sure that's actually happening. So the SAVE Act is so critically important.
The SAVE Act requires states to obtain in-person documentary proof of citizenship before registering a person to vote. The measure would also require states to remove non-citizens from existing voter rolls. They are already prohibited from voting in federal and state elections, though some cities allow non-U.S. citizens to vote in some local elections. Democrats claim the bill goes against the very foundations of our democracy.
The SAVE Act is a voter suppression bill, and there will be strong Democratic opposition to it, just like there is unified Democratic opposition in the lawsuit that was filed against Donald Trump related to his unconstitutional and unlawful voter suppression executive order.
President Donald Trump has voiced continued support for the measure, including during his 2024 presidential campaign. I'll stay on top of the issue. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly, including fighting for religious freedom. As President Trump names his nominee for Ambassador for Religious Freedom, we talked to one of his predecessors about the role and the challenges ahead. And Holy Week begins in 2 days. We speak with Father John Paul Mary about the best ways to enter into the Paschal Mystery. Reaction is pouring in after a New York City sightseeing helicopter broke apart in midair, crashing upside down in the Hudson River, killing all on board. The victims included a tech executive along with his wife and 3 children, as well as the pilot. Witnesses described the helicopter as falling apart in midair with the tail and main rotor coming off. The NTSB is investigating the tragic incident. More than a dozen parishes in New York State have been given permission to delay proposed mergers. Last year, the head of the Diocese of Buffalo announced plans to reduce the number of parishes by around 25%. Local media this week said 14 parishes received letters from the Vatican saying that the mergers are being reviewed. Jimmy Lai, imprisoned in Hong Kong and known the world over as a man suffering for his commitment to freedom, has just been given a special honor. He will be this year's honorary recipient of the prestigious Bradley Prize for being a, quote, courageous advocate for democracy and freedom of the press. Lai was arrested in 2020, accused of colluding with foreign forces. Since then, he has become the face of political oppression in China. The Bradley Foundation, based in Milwaukee, awards the prize to those who embody the principles of freedom. President Trump has nominated former U.S. Representative Mark Walker to be U.S. Ambassador at Large for Religious Freedom. President Trump says the former North Carolina congressman will, quote, work incredibly hard to expose human rights violations, champion faith, and help us secure life-saving results. Warner thanked the president and added that he is open-eyed to the bad actors and regions committing human rights atrocities. Joining us now is Sam Brownback, former Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom under President Donald Trump's first administration. Ambassador Brownback, good to see you. You said in a post on X that you were delighted with the president's pick of Mark Walker. Tell us a little bit more about him and what makes him such a good pick.
Well, there's several real key assets that he brings. Number one is he knows the president well, and the president knows him. And that's the key piece for the ambassador, is just that he can be out there and speaking for the president of the United States. And whenever he travels around the world, he's speaking for the president, and people respect that. So that's the biggest thing. Number two, he's been a pastor, so he really knows the issues, and it's in his heart, it's in his DNA. This is what he is, this is what he's about. And then he's been in Congress, so he knows the Hill. And the Hill is critically important on pushing religious freedom around the world for people to know that you understand how the process works. You have friends where the process works, and you mean what you say, and you're going to get things done. I think this is a really excellent pick for the president.
And as mentioned, you served in the position under President Trump's first term. For those who may not know, what really goes into this job?
Well, there's a lot that goes into this job because religious freedom has become the cornerstone human right issues for those of us on the right. And it's an issue around which, if you can get it established in countries, you can build your other human rights of right of assembly, the right of free speech, these other things, if you can get this foundational issue set right. So this issue really gets attacked, particularly by authoritarians and the Chinese Communist Party. They are all about eliminating religious freedom. To them, it's an existential threat. To us, it's a cornerstone human right. There really couldn't be a bigger dichotomy, and carrying that message and pushing it around the world is what the ambassador does.
What do you think some of the biggest challenges will be for this next ambassador as he tackles this issue around the world?
Well, I've mentioned one of them already, China. I mean, we're just in a Cold War right now with China, and they have a completely different view of religion than we do. I think second, Africa is going to be a huge problem. You've got so many militant Islamic groups operating in that country and attacking Christians in particular, but other Muslim groups that don't agree with them, they attack them as well. Those are two key spots. And then you've got very tight issues as well, like in Burma, Nicaragua. You've got problems in Armenia with being attacked by Turkey and Azerbaijan. There are really a huge number of problems. And then in the developed world, you've got this sort of suffocation effort going on towards religion in general and Christianity in particular, where they just really try to suffocate faith. And that's got to be a light shined on it and action taken.
We'll be paying attention to all those issues. Ambassador Brownback, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, fashion statement, what the Vatican is saying about the Holy Father's surprise appearance yesterday at St. Peter's. Plus, advice for the faithful on how to get the most out of Holy Week. The Vatican says that Pope Francis is showing more signs of improvement after spending several weeks in a Rome hospital. The Holy See says Pope Francis is improving in his breathing, mobility, and speaking, and his blood tests are good. Officials also weighed in on the Holy Father's surprise appearance without traditional papal attire yesterday at St. Peter's Basilica. They said he had been out for some air and decided spontaneously to pray at the tomb of Pope Pius X. As we draw closer to Holy Week, a Catholic lay group is among those turning its attention to the Middle East, and especially rebuilding efforts in Lebanon. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Siertegren has more.
Lebanon is one of the most fragile countries in the Middle East. Years of destruction caused by war, the influx of refugees from Syria, a devastating financial crisis, and widespread humanitarian suffering have made reconstruction a difficult task. To address this crisis and support the country's recovery, an international workshop on solidarity, dialogue, and reconstruction was held in Rome, sponsored by the Order of Malta and the Embassy of Germany to the Holy See and to the Order. The Order of Malta has long had a presence in the country, tracing its origin to the Holy Land, and so close is the link between Lebanon and the Catholic faith that constitutionally the president must be a Maronite Catholic. The event started with a special video message from the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, who expressed his gratitude for the international support and stressed the critical need for action.
فبينما يثقل عبء التاريخ كاهلنا فإن ضرورات الحاضر تتطلب منا التحرك.
The meeting brought together high-level diplomatic, religious, and humanitarian authorities to reflect on how to bring about stability in the entire region. A panel discussion was held dedicated to Lebanon's model of interreligious coexistence, which included the participation of Cardinal Claudio Gugerotti, the prefect of the Dicastery for the Eastern Churches, who stressed the importance of the Church to encourage Christians in Lebanon to stay, since they are a vital part of the pluralistic nation's and Church's identity.
So you see, our work is to try to convince them that for the Church, to lose the Catholics or the Christians in Lebanon means to lose a part of the Church that cannot be reproduced, which means a part of the identity of the Catholic Church.
Tobias Tunkel, the director for the Middle East and North Africa at the Foreign Ministry of Germany, also spoke about the importance of the interreligious richness of Lebanon.
There is a certain tendency to believe that only ethnical and religious homogeneous states can provide stability. It is all the more important to help Lebanon to prove that the opposite is true, that the diversity, the richness of its people is the source of its prosperity and of its peace.
The Catholic Church has always seen Lebanon as a special place and model of how different faiths can live together in peace. When Pope St. John Paul II visited the country in 1997, he told the Lebanese people that their country was a shining example of religious diversity and harmony, and urged them to continue being a symbol of hope and coexistence for all. He emphasized Lebanon's role not just as a unique example for the Middle East, but as a message for the world.
We are a little country with 18 different communities. The Christians are a minority. So, if we believe that we're real Christians, we should try to build this famous experience that Pope St. John Paul II called to Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis. Let's create one Lebanese man made out of all those communities, based on love, based on security, that this is the only way to live in peace.
In Rome, Benedict Cedergren, EWTN News Nightly.
In 2 days, Catholics across the globe will go to church to celebrate Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry of our Lord into Jerusalem, marking the start of Holy Week. It's a week of profound importance for every Christian, one in which we receive an opportunity to journey with our Lord through his passion and have revealed to us the glory of the Paschal mystery. EWTN's Montse Alvarado spoke with Father John Paul Mary about the importance of Holy Week.
Father John Paul Mary of the Franciscan Missionaries of the Eternal Word and EWTN employee chaplain is here to unpack Holy Week for us. Let's start with the beginning of this. Holy Week is this holiest of the holy times of the year for us as Catholics, and it begins on Sunday, Palm Sunday.
Yeah.
How should we be preparing ourselves for this important moment?
Yeah, I think, Monse, first of all, the preparation for the Triduum and itself, Holy Week, is Lent. Lent is that 40-day preparation, like the Lord entering into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Lent is that 40-day retreat to prepare us for what we're going to do at Easter. What is that? To renew our vows.
Now, talk to us a little bit about the Paschal Triduum. Chronologically, it's 3 days, but it's said that liturgically it's 1 day, right? Revealing for us the unity of the Paschal mystery. What's the significance of each day? How does that work?
Yeah, it starts with Mass of the Lord's Supper. You know, so it starts out a church that the tabernacle was empty. So it starts out, you're going into in reality the representation of Calvary in an unbloody manner. So that's the Mass of the Lord's Supper. So Holy Mass is offered, and then right after Mass, remember there's a procession from the altar to a place of reposition, and that's in really the memory of what happened after the Last Supper, the Lord entering into that sacred time of the agony in the garden, leading to his passion. So we in a way choose to follow Jesus, like the Mass of the Lord's Supper, and then afterwards we process with the Blessed Sacrament, and we choose in a kind of a radical way to follow him in procession to that place of reposition.
When you think about those 3 days, they're not holy days of obligation.
No.
Why would you encourage someone to live through all of these liturgical celebrations?
Yeah, I think first of all that Good Friday, why do we call that day good? When the most heinous act ever committed, deicide, the killing of our God, happened on that day. The day is good because of who it was nailed upon the cross. You know, the God-man in his sacred humanity, by his precious blood, he made that day good. There's really, I mean, if you look at it, you look at a crucifix and you think that this is a man who was defeated. But we know that that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is on the days that precede that, after, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, Easter Sunday, resurrection. So we as Christians look upon the cross and we see that that's not the end of the story. And I think that we are to enter into that reality, those events that took place 2,000 years ago, in the context of our own story right now. Like, where am I at this year? Not last year.
That's a beautiful invitation for us to really live it, not just witness it or rush to
Yeah.
it, rush to Easter Sunday and skip all of the events that lead to that wonderful grace and
personalize
mercy.
it.
Yeah.
Mother Angelica was real big on personalizing the faith, putting yourself in the story in the context of sacred scripture. That way it becomes alive.
Yeah.
She says that the Bible is not just a book like any other magazine, but you need to put blood and guts into it.
Blood and guts, for sure. That's the church.
Literally.
It's literally blood and guts. Well, thank you for this explanation and this invitation for everyone to live the Triduum and continue on that real blood and guts journey of our faith.
You're welcome. God bless you.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Mark Irons. Good night and God bless.